News Desk at the Columbus Dispatch presents the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast. With your host, Ohio State basketball beat writer Adam Jardy.
Brady Batista, give me the rock. Here it goes. Up and away. Slam jam bam. And now he does a little dance.
Now, the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Adam Jardy from the Columbus Dispatch. Today is Thursday, August 14th, 2025. It's my official duty to welcome you into episode 490 of the BuckeyeXtra Men's Basketball Podcast. Welcome to Jubilation City. Welcome back upstairs. Welcome back to the ground floor. As I mentioned on last week's podcast, we are officially back to school here in the Jardy house, which means I have a quiet, sad, lonely house during the day. And the result of that is that I'm back at my desk here recording this podcast. Got a couple things worth going over here as we inch our way closer and closer to the resumption of practice and before long here, the beginning of fall for the Buckeyes. But sitting here today, one day removed from Ohio State unveiling its official full 2025-26 non-conference schedule. That was the big news drop on Wednesday at noon. I've actually written 3 stories on it at this point, and I got a couple of thoughts about it. I got some numbers to throw at you, and then I think I want to take a look at what I think this schedule does or does not do to enhance Ohio State's chances of returning to the NCAA tournament. So we're going to get into all that here in just a moment. It is, again, the Buckeyes. This is the second week now where everybody's been off. Players are back home. Players are vacationing, getting whatever break they want to get here at the end of the summer. Everyone reports back to campus next week, and that will be the final week of summer workouts. That will lead right into the start of the fall. So we're getting closer and closer. I think I saw we're like 81 or 80 days till the start of college basketball season. It doesn't feel like that in Columbus. I mean, it's like 90 and humid every day of the week still right now. So it's hard to really visualize that we're getting that close in the calendar, but that's the reality. We are starting to, it's creeping up on us, I feel like. And so now at least as we sit here on August 14th, we've got to get, or we're able rather to put some games on the calendar. We're able to look at who Ohio State is playing outside of the Big Ten and start building some of that out. And so we're gonna break that down here in just a second. Before we do, I want to remind you you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. If you're subscribed, you'll automatically get the newest ones just as soon as our man, Patrick Flaherty, the Podfather, can grab them and publish them for you. While you're subscribing or downloading, please leave a review. Please click 5 stars. And please consider telling a friend. Thanks to everyone who's taking the time to do all those things. So we're just going to run down the schedule here as a whole before we start getting into some of my takeaways from having examined it. So we don't have an official announcement yet on exhibition games. I am expecting there to be a home exhibition game against an in-state school with a coach who has a significant tie to Ohio State. That announcement has not been made. I would expect that to be coming here in the not too distant future. The plan was for Ohio State to play another public charity exhibition. That did not come to fruition, and as a result, I'm expecting Ohio State to play a closed secret scrimmage at some point against another high major opponent. Neither of those have been announced, and we didn't get firm updates on either of those in this announcement here of the non-conference schedule. There was an indication that we'll get a Big Ten schedule in early September, and it is worth remembering that the logistics of which television/streaming partner gets which game and when those games are played and who has priority picking them, it is a lengthy, rather ridiculous process. And, there's a reason that we will get within 2 months of the start of the season and still not know who's playing where, when, and on what network. That's just, it seems like year by year, we're getting closer and closer to the start of the season without having ironed out those details. And it's certainly it's challenging for the fans. People want to know what games can I get tickets to? How am I going to watch this game? For those of us that do this for a living, it's, we're just waiting to see where we're going to be and how's that all going to work. There's a lot that kind of goes into this, and I know we all would very much like to have a schedule sooner rather than later. But at least we can start here and we can we can pen in 11 of these games. So the season starts. Worth noting, we don't have game times for these yet. But the season will begin on Monday, November 3rd with a home game against IU Indy. It's 4 days later, Purdue Fort Wayne. November 11th, Appy State. November 16th, a Sunday, Notre Dame comes to Value City Arena. Start of the home and home. Buckeyes will go there next year. Thursday, November 20th, Western Michigan comes to Value City Arena. Tuesday, November 25th, Mount St. Mary's, the Mount, will be in Columbus. Friday, November 28th, the Buckeyes go to Pitt. Then there's a break in the schedule where expect there to be at least one, if not most likely two, Big Ten games, because Ohio State then will not play until December 13th when it plays West Virginia in Cleveland at Rocket Arena, home of the Cavs. And the Buckeyes are off for 7 more days before playing North Carolina in the CBS Sports Classic in Atlanta on December 20th, returning home and playing Grambling State on Tuesday, December 23rd. And then there's one more non-conference game on the schedule that will come on Saturday, February 14th, when the Buckeyes will go to Bridgestone Arena in Nashville to take on Virginia in the Nashville Hoops Showdown. So that is our non-conference schedule for the Buckeyes for this season. So the first thing that I think is worth noting, or the first thing that maybe jumps out, is that Ohio State does not play a road game until November 28th. Ohio State will be 6 games into the season before it goes anywhere. And when it does go somewhere, it goes to Pitt. Now, that Pitt game is most likely going to be the start of a stretch of 5 straight high major games at Pitt, most likely 2 Big Ten games, West Virginia in Cleveland, North Carolina in Atlanta. Before getting to there, that schedule between IU Indy on November 3rd, which IU Indy used to be IUPUI or Uipui, depending on who you asked. It's going to be hard for me to keep that straight in my head. But this slate of home games for Ohio State, if you're a fan that has season tickets and you want good games in Value City Arena, this schedule is going to leave you disappointed. And there's no way to look at it otherwise. Even getting Notre Dame in the arena, which Notre Dame should be better. We'll see what kind of season the Fighting Irish have. But of the 5 high major teams on Ohio State's non-conference schedule, Notre Dame is the second lowest rated. Now, there's certainly some emotional ties there between Ohio State and Notre Dame fans, but the 6 bye games that Ohio State will play are the definition of bye games. None of these teams jump off the page. I'm sure when we really dig into it, there's probably a connection here or there with maybe some of the coaching staff, but we don't have like preseason KenPom predictions yet. But there is, you've heard me on the podcast talk about BartTorvik.com, who runs an awesome statistical analysis website, analytic website about college basketball. Bart Torvik does have preseason projections. For what it's worth, Ohio State is 19th. Yes, Ohio State's 19th. It is ranked higher than every team on its non-conference schedule, save for North Carolina, which is ranked 18th. But these are the rankings for Ohio State's 6 bye games at Value City Arena. IU Indy, 357th. Purdue Fort Wayne, 255th. Appalachian State, 223rd. Western Michigan, 306th. Mount St. Mary's, 264th. And Grambling, 261st. Now, that's an average preseason ranking of 277.7. And that's just frankly not all that intriguing. There's just not much there that makes you go, man, that's a game we have to get to. And certainly I hear that from the fans, and I heard that yesterday when the schedule was announced. Like, it's just not a whole lot there. And when you look at how many times has Ohio State failed to break 10,000 fans inside Value City Arena since the building opened, There have been 16 regular season home games. We don't count the Akron NIT game. 10 years ago, 11 years ago. It's my first year on the beat for the Dispatch. But that postseason stuff is exempt from this. The ticket process is different, all that. But anyway, the record for the smallest attendance for a home opener, 9,141, which was November 2nd, 2022, against Robert Morris. Is that in jeopardy when IU Indy comes to town on Monday, November 3rd? We'll see. This is not going to do this slate of games isn't going to do a whole lot to combat the narrative that it's not a great arena, and that there's not going to be, based on these teams, a whole ton of juice, I would think. Now, maybe I'm proven wrong. Maybe there's ticket deals and things, and maybe it ends up being bigger crowds than we thought. But we are looking at, in November, Monday, Friday, Tuesday, Sunday, Thursday, Tuesday for the home games. And the one weekend game there is the Notre Dame game, which, I would expect that to have a good crowd. But I started looking up even just how has Ohio State done historically against these 6 teams. And it turns out Ohio State's played these 6 teams a combined 13 times. The Buckeyes are 13-0. The average margin of victory in those 13 games is 24.6 points. Ohio State has had one single-digit win against those 6 teams. And actually it was against Michigan State. It was a 6-point win against the Broncos. Otherwise, there's an 11-point win against IU Indy, Ooey Pooey. Although the last time those teams played, it was a 46-point win for Ohio State. It's also a 46-point win against Purdue Fort Wayne, 39-point win against Mount St. Mary's. You get the picture. I don't need to beat the dead horse there, but just not a whole lot of juice when it comes to that slate of games, when it comes to those bye games. And frankly, that's just a part of college basketball, that those schools play these games for funds that help keep the athletic department running. And you have a school like Ohio State that will pay you that. So you're going to take your beating. Unless you're UT Arlington or Louisiana Tech, you're going to take that check. You're going to take your beating, and you're going to fund your athletic department and move on to the next thing. Ohio State will pay for those 6 games $565,000. I submitted a public records request to look at the game contracts. That was fulfilled shortly after the schedule was released. So Ohio State's paying Appy State $85,000. Grambling gets $100,000. IU Indy $90,000. Purdue Fort Wayne $95,000. And then technically Western Michigan and Mount St. Mary's will be playing in an MTE. And Ohio State will be paying the two of them, or rather paying the company that's helping them put this on, $195,000. So that all adds up to $565,000 that Ohio State is paying for those 6 teams to come to Value City Arena and presumably absorb a double-digit loss. Now, the schedule does start to change with the game at Pitt. And this is where we're going to start to learn something more about Ohio State. This is where, if we want to have an idea of where this season could be headed, because realistically, and we can express all the reservations we have about what does the roster look like? What does year 2 of Jake Diebler look like? Like, does this team take a step? Like, all fine and good. Nobody's projecting Notre Dame to be a world beater this year. You should be looking at an Ohio State team that has won its first 6 games all at home against teams it will be favored against, in most cases significantly, before it goes to Pitt. And then between that game on Friday, November 28th, and the North Carolina game on Saturday, December 20th, Ohio State will play 5 straight high major teams. And we don't know yet which Big Ten teams it will be. That will certainly have an impact on what Ohio State's record will look like as we move into January. But that's going to be a big stretch. And that's where we're actually going to start to learn something. Like, Ohio State should roll in pretty much its first 6 games. At least 5 of its first 6 should be, by the midpoint of the second half, we're seeing the end of the bench and things are well in hand. But once it starts this stretch of high major games, without knowing who the Big Ten opponents are, this is an interesting slate of high major non-conference opponents to me, because you start looking at where these teams are ranked. Again, preseason projections, bartorvik.com. Notre Dame 66th nationally. Pitt 76th. West Virginia 57th. North Carolina 18th. And Virginia 35th. So you're talking about an average between those 5 teams of 50.4. And those are, the Notre Dame game is home. Like I said, the other ones are neutral or road. And what is interesting to me is that you are looking at a schedule that honestly none of these teams really significantly pop other than North Carolina. And that's not really a game that Ohio State controlled. Like that's a game that was contractually obligated via the contract with the CBS Sports Classic. But you start looking at who Ohio State is playing in the non-conference, and you unless you want to say it all stinks, everything stinks, they're going to be 7-5 in the 7-5. Math is hard. They're going to be 6-5 in the non-conference. Okay, let's just. I reject that scenario. Let's just we're not going to entertain that line of thought. I see that as being rather unrealistic. But having said that, when I start thinking about what is realistic for the schedule, these are all winnable games. And if this is a team that takes a step from last year, if Devin Royal and John Mobley as a junior and a sophomore take a big step forward and the transfers are fitting in, and this looks like, the new type of ball club that Jake Diebler has talked about wanting it to look like, does a game at Pitt scare you? No, it's going to be a Friday night. It's going to be loud. It's going to be a really good environment. But like every one of these guys that Ohio State's going to be counting on this year has played in that environment 20 plus, well, not 20, I don't know, 15, 20 times over last year. That's not going to be new to them. And this isn't going to Cameron Indoor. This is going to Pitt, which might end up being a decent team, but certainly not on the same level of like, man, you go to Pitt, it's good luck at the Peterson Center? Peterson Event Center, pardon me. Certainly that's a losable game, but that's also a very winnable game. And then you look at playing West Virginia and Cleveland, like also imminently winnable game. Could you lose that game? Yes, but certainly that is winnable and attainable for Ohio State. We don't really know a whole lot. Like what's Virginia going to look like? And where are these teams going to be when they face each other on Valentine's Day? Like, who knows? But even like that game on paper, playing Virginia on a neutral, at worst, is it a toss-up? These are all games that are like last year, Ohio State going to play Auburn in Atlanta. Yeah, that was always going to be, you would need a lot of things to go really well for you to be in that game with 4 minutes left. And nothing went well on that day. We can all agree on that. There was some of that, last year when you look at that schedule. These are all winnable games. Every game that Ohio State scheduled is not a situation where you're playing somebody that you're going to be, it's a neutral, but you're going to be facing a road crowd, or you're playing in someone's arena that is just an unbelievable home court environment. And again, I'm not trying to just like rag on Pitt here, but I'm going to pull up right now at KenPom. There is a bottom of the schedule page. They list like where the home games for each team are played and what the home court advantage calculates to. So there's a home court advantage at the Peterson Event Center of 3.1. That ranks 124th in D1 men's college basketball, according to KenPom. Ohio State, 3.5, 62nd in D1. So if that gives you any sort of indication, like the difficulty level of going into the Peterson Event Center and winning, that's a winnable type of game. These could all potentially end up being quad one games for Ohio State. And I think the fact that they scheduled in a way, you can't afford certainly like a slip up against a quad four team. And I would essentially expect that all 6 of the bye games will be quad four games. But otherwise, Notre Dame, Pitt, West Virginia, North Carolina, Virginia, all 5 of those could be quad one games. And you could be looking at an Ohio State team that through its non-conference took no bad losses and added winnable games that will also rate highly, will rate highly in the metrics used to help seed the NCAA tournament. That does not mean it's the most exciting schedule for fans. And I hope that as we move forward, that I would love to see fewer games against IU Indy. I would. I'd rather see Ohio State be playing more high major teams every single night. with a 20-game Big Ten schedule and the way that the college basketball landscape is right now and the difficulties of trying to schedule home and homes with high majors and trying to get those games on the calendars, I hear it from multiple coaches. It is more challenging by the year. So if you're Ohio State and you're trying to put together a schedule that's going to give you the best possible path to get back to March Madness, I think the schedule supports that. I think this schedule helps Ohio State achieve that goal of putting winnable games against good, not great, high major teams. And then there's the bye games that everyone's just expected to win. I think that if Ohio State does what it should do against the schedule, sorry about my voice. If Ohio State does what it should do against the schedule, it will support Ohio State's NCAA tournament resume to a point that another strong Big Ten year as a whole will have Ohio State in pretty good position when it comes to the NCAA tournament picture. So that's why, in general, I think the schedule probably does what Ohio State wants it to do. Now, it is still weird that Ohio State's going to take a break from Big Ten play and go play Virginia, like in the middle of February. And it is interesting. I've heard multiple national people have talked about this, how like last year when Duke and Illinois played at Madison Square Garden in February, apparently that was something that both John Shire and Brad Underwood were like super happy about. Like that was, they both thought it was good for their teams. It enabled them to get out of conference and, learn a little bit more about themselves. Ultimately, I don't think it did. I mean, it allowed Illinois to close the season on a 3-game win streak and then beat the Hawkeyes in the Big Ten tournament after the Hawkeyes eliminated Ohio State. But then Illinois got boat raced by Maryland in the Big Ten tournament, took down Xavier, lost to Kentucky. So, yeah, I mean, it was a fine overall year. And certainly if you're Ohio State and you're looking at Illinois going 22-13 and 12-8 in the Big Ten and second round in the NCAA tournament, you take that. But I digress. Both coaches were very much in favor of doing that, of getting that game on the schedule in the middle of their conference slates. Probably did Duke more good than anything because Duke, the ACC was essentially garbage last year, and the Blue Devils took that game, won 110-67, and then a lot of green on Duke's KenPom page. Duke was 20-3 after a 6-point loss at Clemson on February 8th, and did not lose again until the Final Four. So that was a streak of, if my math is correct, 15 straight wins for the Blue Devils, including that 43-point beatdown of the Fighting Illini. It wasn't that long ago that we saw this with regularity. Ohio State's schedule in the past, like in 2010, Ohio State lost at West Virginia 71-65 in between playing Northwestern at home and going to Iowa. The year before that, Ohio State hosted Houston Baptist. The year before that, they went to Tennessee. So like this used to happen with some regularity. There was the game against Uipui/IU Indy that was hastily added to the schedule amid all the COVID cancellations back in 2020, 2021. But I'm interested going forward. Like, is this something that becomes more common? And I think it's good for the fans. Like, I think we can all admit that when you're playing in the case of the Big Ten, at least we do get the 2 Big Ten games generally in December, leaving you 18 Big Ten games to play consecutively. Like, and then your conference tournament. I like the thought of stepping out of conference for a minute and playing somebody else, especially when it's someone else who is a good team, like it is a high major team. It's not just, if Ohio State was stepping out of Big Ten play to play, no offense, IU Indy, but you're the lowest rated team on the schedule. If Ohio State was stepping out of Big Ten play and scheduling IU Indy for just like a break from Big Ten play, I don't know what that would accomplish, frankly. So interested to see going forward. Haven't had a chance to talk to Jake Diebler about this. If this is something like, do they envision this being a thing going forward? Do they need to wait and see how this goes? Something to monitor as we look at the upcoming schedules. And one more note on upcoming schedules. I did see a report that the Players Era Festival in Las Vegas, the Players Era Tournament, I think what is the official title on this? Yeah, just Players Era. Yeah, Players Era Festival. It's growing. And I think the intent is to expand from 16 teams this year to 32 teams next year. You earn NIL money for playing in this. If Ohio State could have gotten in it in either of the last 2 years, I believe the Buckeyes would have. I would be surprised if Ohio State is not in next year's Players Era Festival, just given that it does a lot to help you fill your NIL coffers. And I guess we'll see how that kind of fits into the new rev share era. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking next year about Ohio State trying to find a way to be one of the 32 teams that's in this event, because that's a payday. And that also goes along with what Ohio State will make for playing some of these non-conference games this year, with the game against Virginia, the West Virginia game, and the CBS game against North Carolina. Ohio State will earn $550,000 for playing in those 3 games. Plus, there's some revenue sharing opportunities with the Virginia game based on net profit after ticket sales and stuff that some of the with a business degree would understand better. But Ohio State, when it has these kinds of opportunities, every team in America is looking for them. So we'll be interested going forward if Ohio State can find a way to get into that Players Era Festival and what that might mean for the rest of the non-conference. As we know, next year Ohio State will play at Notre Dame and will play in the CBS Sports Classic, which is slated to be a game against UCLA. We'll see if that changes. So one other topic I'd like to just kind of put on your radar here as we move further and further into August. But recruiting is starting to pick up, and we're getting closer and closer to visit season and list cutting season and all those kinds of things. And I've had quite a few Ohio State recruiting stories here these last 2-3 weeks or so. I have multiple stories on LJ Smith, Dylan Ziegler, Cam Mercer. Before I started recording this, I finished up a story on Anthony Thompson, who is the top-rated player in Ohio in 2026. Actually, the top-rated player in Ohio to play his senior season in Ohio since Jared Sullinger. The guys that are rated as highly as him don't stay in Ohio. And granted, he's not playing in the he's playing for Western Reserve Academy. He's not playing as part of the OHSAA, but he is in Ohio, which is fairly uncommon these days when it comes to this state's prep talent. But we've got some visitors coming in, starting to build out a recruiting calendar. We know that first weekend when the football team hosts Texas, Marcus Johnson will be on campus. Anthony Thompson will be on campus. Josh Tyson will be on campus. And DeMarcus Henry, who's a 2027 recruit, he'll be there on an unofficial visit. We also know that September 26th and 27th, that weekend, Luca Foster and Jalen Collingwood will both be on campus as well. This is early in the scheduling phase, and there's always the caveat of hey, a guy scheduled 7 visits. Are they going to take all 7? Or are they going to end up taking 3? We'll see how these lists change and evolve. But Ohio State will get the first visit for Anthony Thompson. And I spoke with his high school coach for a pretty in-depth story on kind of his background, what he does, how they use him, what Ohio State's recruitment has been like, what the upside looks like there. He's a really interesting player because he has really, really, really polished shooting stroke, and is a guy who grew up basically playing as a guard, hit a growth spurt. Now he's 6'8", 6'9", with a 7'3" wingspan, and all the national recruiting analysts just rave about his shooting ability. And so you talk about a 6'9" guy who could play on the wing, who's comfortable handling the ball, working in ball screen situations, both as a screener and as a shooter. It's clear to see why he's a 5-star, top 10 prospect, and someone that is, obviously important to Ohio State's recruiting efforts going forward. Ohio State still with the 2 commitments for 2026, and Marcus Johnson and Alex Smith. We'll see ultimately how big that class becomes, but Anthony Thompson, certainly a guy to keep an eye on. So he will be at Ohio State here at the end of the month. All right, well, I think that's going to wrap this one up. I don't necessarily like getting too, hey, here's this guy and he's this recruit and he's this, and I feel like that's boring listening. So just encourage you to keep visiting dispatch.com. I'm going to keep the recruiting stories coming, keep reaching out to guys who are visiting and, getting to see where they all fit into the picture. And certainly as visits happen, I'll have full coverage for you from there as well. So I'm going to wrap this one up. I got some more stuff to go right. So I wanted to get this out. I'd hoped to get it out sooner, but wanted to get the Anthony Thompson story written first. So as always, you can send along your questions, your comments, your love notes, your hate mail, and otherwise constructive criticism to me at Adam Jardy on Twitter or ajardy@dispatch.com. Thanks again for listening. Thanks to Patrick Flaherty, the Podfather, for getting this out to you. I'll be back with you next week, hopefully earlier in the week. So until then, be kind, take care, and we'll talk soon.
Be sure and subscribe to the Buckeye Extra podcast in the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or on Stitcher.